episode. I'm Jack Gold, joined by my guy, Matt St. Charles. A little bit of a SoCon basketball pod. There's nothing, we both love, we're both a little bit of a sicko for mid-major basketball. And there's not anybody talking about SoCon basketball every day, so we figured we'd start one up here. Matt, how you feel?
Feeling good. I'm excited. Got some games that happened earlier this week. Excited to get rolling here in SoCon.
Yeah, so am I. So here, the first episode today, we are going to talk who can win the SoCon. So, we feel like there's a clear top 5 teams in the SoCon. So we're going to talk on them, have some other words on the other teams that we don't feel like this is going to be their year. So in all honesty, we probably won't talk about them a lot on the podcast this year. Sorry, VMI. Then we're going to do our kind of preseason predictions for our all SoCon teams and other awards, and then we'll touch on some of the games and that have happened and games that are coming up. So let's start here. My clear top 5 teams are Furman, Sanford, Western Carolina. That's the top 3 for me. I think they're a tier above everyone else right now. And then I go Chattanooga and UNCG. I don't know if you have the same tier of top 3, Matt, do you?
No, I completely agree. And those 1 through 3 are very interchangeable to me. I feel like any of those teams could win the conference.
Yeah, same. I made a little tweet of my preseason predictions, and I had Furman 3, which I kind of do believe. I like Western Carolina a lot, and I like Sanford's. And we'll
Furman
get more
fans
into
will be
it.
mad at you for
But
that.
I knew I would get the Furman fans mad at me. That's what I'm there
Yeah.
for. I've already had Furman moms mad at me earlier this year.
Oh no, not moms.
Yeah, I've had Sanford family mad at me. So that's, if you don't say somebody's the greatest ever, that's how it's going to be. So let's start here. Let's start. They'll go first. They won the SoCon last year. Let's start with Furman. Going to be led by JP Pegues and Marcus Foster. Your thoughts on them? Who do you think's the best player there? What do you think they're going to do this year?
Um, Obviously it's going to be hard for them to replace Lawson and Bothwell, but they seem to just kind of be sliding Pegues and Marcus Foster, and then a little bit of Garrett Heen kind of into those roles. I just think they're a really deep team. You know, you got those 3 guys, and then you got Huey is an elite shooter. PJ Smith had to start at point guard the other night with Pegues out, and I thought he played really well. And then they've got some bigs off the bench in Vanderwall and Bowser and Molnar that came in and provided a lot of length and defensive effort for them. And I just think top to bottom, they have a very good shot to repeat and win the conference.
Yeah, I agree. I'm probably a little more. I wouldn't even say pessimistic, but I'm not like a lot of people. The coaches, almost all of them, picked them to win it. I got to see JP Pegues as the number 1 guy. I really like JP Pegues. We're both from the Nashville area. I'm always rooting for the Nashville guys. And I thought he was really good. I was a big fan of him last year. But I did think at times whenever Bothwell struggled and they started to focus in more on him, I thought he struggled sometimes. But I do think one of the big, best parts of his game is his size and dominating small guards. Poor Dalvin White last year on Chattanooga. I remember watching him get drove to the basket multiple times in the SoCon championship. And that's one thing I've always said about Pegues is, he may not be able to do it. He struggled against Virginia. He hit the shot and everyone forgets he was not good against Virginia. I think I think he takes advantage of his size at this level, and that works. But I want to see him. I want to see him more as the number 1 guy when he's at the top of the scouting report. I'm a big fan of Marcus Foster. Always have been. We'll see if the consistency's there. I thought early in the year that he was their 3rd best player. And then JP Pegues came onto the scene and kind of took over that spot. And Foster struggled a little bit. So I'm interested to see. I think he's got not NBA potential like Slauson did, but if he put everything together, I guess technically, wings that are athletic and strong and can do it both ways like he can
Yeah,
do
you
stuff.
make
I'm also go ahead.
You make a good point with Pegues that he made that shot, but it's hard to just or like not get caught up in that and just think he's going to be a great player when now he's got to step into that role as the top guy. And I really think Marcus Foster is in for a huge year. Bob Ritchie has just been raving on him all summer, and I think he could honestly be the best player on that team.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I also really like Alex Williams. That man has never skipped a rep in the weight room ever in his life. He's scary to look at, and he surprisingly most buff guys can't. He seems like he can shoot it pretty well. I think he can guard well. He's a problem for a lot of fours because he can strengthen up and guard the bigger ones, and then the smaller ones he can post up, can drive by bigger ones. I like him a lot, and I don't know if he's ever gotten the opportunity he deserved. And I think he will this year. Um, I'm not sure that he started the other night. If I'm right or wrong there, maybe he did. Um,
I don't think he did.
yeah, I'm a fan of him too. Kind of like Marcus Foster. I like, you know, athletic wings that can shoot it. Um, Another guy that I like a lot is Vanderwall. Like you said, that dude just plays hard, and I could see a world where he starts at some point this year if one of those guys struggle. I don't know. He has the ceiling of other guys. Um, we'll see. That dude. I mean, he was a freshman last year, made a big impact. He just plays so hard. He's one of those guys that really gets on your nerves to play against. Um, I really also am interested to see how PJ Smith and Carter Witt play out
That's
because
I was waiting for you to
yeah,
mention Carter Witt.
everyone's big fans of PJ Smith, and I'll say I've watched him at Lee multiple times. I got friends who play at the D2 level that I went down to Lee because it's close to us. Um, I don't know if I was ever overly impressed with him, but he's a good player. Um, he kind of feels like a really low floor guy. Like he's going to be able to play his role, know what he's there for, not going to try to do too much. Whereas I think Carter Witt's kind of the other way. I think Carter Witt, I mean, he was like a 4-star in high school. If I'm not, I think I'm right there. Um, it's got a high ceiling, but sometimes it's like, dude, calm down. He's got to chill out. And he started alongside Smith the other night with Pegues out. I'll be interested to see how that one plays out because I think the best version of Furman would be Carter Witt
Pegues
taking
and
over
Witt.
that second guard spot
I agree.
just because he's so talented. But I don't know if that's really likely. I think PJ Smith may be the guy that takes over there, and it's just you can count on him every night to be that guy.
I'm I'm more interested to see who Richie goes to at the end of games if it's close. If he'd rather have Witt in there or PJ Smith.
Yeah, and I'm also probably the one thing that I'm not high on him. I'm not the biggest Garrett Heen fan. Um, I
He
think
did
he I
not
think he
play well
can
the
be
other
good,
night.
but yeah, he's just
I think he's trying to step into this like almost Slauson type role, and he's just a completely different player.
yeah, he's
And
never
I
been the
don't think
guy
you can
who's
use him the same way.
he's never overly impressed me. Just kind of I don't want to call him soft, but he's not Jalen Slauson, and that's a big drop off there. And
Hmm.
then Huey, like you said, he can shoot it, but you know, same thing. All right, let's go. Let's go to Sanford. Sanford's who I have at number 2 in my preseason rankings. And I think they give me, and I may be totally off base here and just nostalgic. They give me kind of Chattanooga, not last year, year before vibes, in that just got so many just solid transfers that it just feels like it's gonna work out. And maybe it
Hmm.
doesn't. I'm not taking anything from the Purdue game. I'm sorry, Sanford fans, if you convince yourself that it was going to be a close game. Purdue gets all this hate, but Purdue's like an awesome regular season team. Now they have choked in March, but it wasn't March, and Zach Edey is going to eat against your bigs. Let's start with the guys that are returning. Jermaine Marshall, most annoying player to play against ever, probably. He's awesome.
He's up there. He's just I interviewed Coach McMillan for Blue Ribbon, and he just could not say enough about about Jermaine Marshall. Says he's the hardest working guy in the Southern Conference, and he's a pain to play against, but he's a good basketball player.
Yeah, he's the number one guy. I'm interested to see him as the guy. They've had Quez Glover, Logan Dye, Bubba Parham last year. Um, I'm interested to see him as the guy. I think he's got to shoot it well, and he didn't shoot it well the other night. Again, I'm not taking much from that. It's a tough environment against a Final Four pick in Purdue. I'm really interested to see him in a higher usage. Another guy I really like that's returning is Achor Achor. I kind of thought preseason, I didn't ever say it, but I kind of thought like he might be the guy that ends up starting. Um, and sure enough, he was, and
He
he
did.
he looks like he's going to be the main guy at big.
Um,
So
Coach
yeah, sorry.
McMillan was really big on Chore too, and says that he's kind of taken a skill leap. Whereas last year he was big and he was athletic, but he was really raw. And he's said that Chore has been out at the 3-point line now shooting threes, and he's really improved his ball handle. So I'm expecting to see some bigger things from Chore this season.
Yeah, another one that in the SoCon tournament, when Jermaine Marshall had that insane game in which they lost, that he had like 27 or whatever. I thought Chor looked good too. He got in foul trouble. That was when Logan Dye went down, got hurt, but I thought he looked good too, and I've kind of been high on him since then. One of the ceiling maybe limiters, I guess, was I thought Zach Loveday was a big wild card. Um, you know, big former big prospect, coming from Baylor, never played there. But I love me some high major transfers. Always bring those into the SoCon. Like if I was ever in coaching, and I see somebody, you think any big player that
Sylvia
transfer or
DeSosa.
any big player that transfers that comes to comes to like a lower level school always ends up being good. But that may not be the case with Loveday. He was the third big off the bench. Riley Allenspach, I think's his name, and you can tell me if I'm pronouncing that right or
The
wrong.
freshman, yeah.
Yeah, he's a good player. I know he's a guy that a lot of schools were after. After I think he was committed to Western, and they lost Stansbury, and then he re-entered. Which may be more of something on talking about him being really good as a freshman, less than it is on Loveday. But I do kind of think that maybe limits their ceiling to me a little bit. That Loveday is considered the third guy in game one. That they went to a freshman right off the bench, and I
Hmm.
like him. And I think in your write up, didn't he? That Bucky was pretty high on him.
Yeah,
So
one of my main concerns with Samford is the wings. I've got to see Jaden Campbell and AJ Staten McCray stay healthy and play a full season because they can be really good two-way players when they are healthy, but I just have to see them do it. And a
yeah,
bright
I agree.
spot for them, Rylan Jones from Utah State. I mean, that guy, I think he fits that offense so well. He's such an elite playmaker. If he has Campbell and Staten McCray, and then he's got a Chore running the floor, and then Jermaine Marshall, if he can set those guys up, and he doesn't have to do much, he just has to not turn the ball over and put guys in spots. I think he could fit them really well.
Exactly. And I like Garrett Hicks a lot too. I think he fits right into the Bubba Parham role. He may not, be a high ceiling guy, but he's just solid. He's done it all the years he's been in college. Maybe he hasn't got a lot better statistically, but he just feels like a plug and play guy. Again, I think he shot 0 for 7 last game, but not taking a lot from that. I'm
Yeah,
excited to see them. I'm excited to see him pan out as the year goes because they just have so many guys that are question marks, but also it just feels like they've got some of them have got to hit, and that's how I felt with Chattanooga some years back when they just had these upperclassmen, all these transfers they got in. People were gonna pan out. You're not gonna miss on everything. Now you're gonna miss on a few, and we'll see. Like you said, Rylan Jones was really good early in his career, kind of struggled the past few years. Um, I'm interested to see Dallas Grazani. I know he started the other night. I don't think he'll start normally. I'm not totally sure what the deal is there. Um, I mean, it was a fun moment though,
yeah. I
but he
was
should provide good minutes.
I was intrigued to see that they did the starting lineup and there was a jump ball and Graziani stayed in. So
Yeah,
I mean, maybe that's just McMillan wanting to see what he's got, but Graziani was a stud at the D2 level, so we'll
Yeah,
see what they got with him.
I think they have probably a little bit better ceilings with a few of the other guys, but then again, I think regardless he'll play a big role and it may not matter. We're we're just kind of trying to figure that out there. I'll touch one more thing on Sanford before we move on to Western. I love their freshman class with Riley Allen Spotch and Lucas Walls is really highly regarded. A lot of people talk. I haven't heard a single person say a bad thing about him. And then Josh Holloway is a guy that he played the other night. I know Bucky's high on him. I know multiple SoCon teams were after him. I know Chattanooga had him on campus. I remember when he was on campus here. Really wanted him. Told people, he's probably going to play this year if this kid commits. And he's ended up at Sanford. But that's about as good as it gets at the mid-major level. From building blocks. They can keep all three of them there.
Holloway
So
is
let's move on. Go
he's
ahead.
from Oak Hill, right?
Yeah. Big school too.
Mm-hmm.
So let's move on to Western Carolina. They're my pick to win the SoCon. I don't care what the history says. They're returning the most, have the least question marks to me. I'm taking them. So what's your thoughts on Western Carolina? I'll let you start.
Western Carolina last night rolled out probably one of the best mid-major starting lineups that I've seen in a long time with Russell Jones and Trey Jackson and then Woolbright, and then they had Cornelius Williams from LSU and 6'11" Charles Lampton. So I mean they got guys over there. I do well, my pick to win the regular season title was Furman, but I think come tournament time this team is going to be a difficult out. um, I think they've got all the talent, and they gave Furman a run for their money last year, and they only got better. So they're definitely going to be a force to be reckoned with.
I agree, and I Woolbright gets all the love, and he should. I'm a big Woolbright guy, and I know that was one of our questions. um, on our question thing that just said Montarius Woolbright. He's awesome, really good player, triple double threat almost every night. It's going to bring it on both ends. You need a bucket late, you can give it to him kind of like on that mid post ISO, kind of on the elbow, and he's just so good at beating people off the dribble there. Probably needs to work on his jumper a little bit. We'll see if that all comes together. But I really think Trey Jackson has been underrated a little bit this year, which sounds crazy, but I don't feel like I've seen him on many first team SoCon picks. I made a hot take the other day, just kind of just sake to make it, that he could win the SoCon Player of the Year. And I believe that. I think he was awesome late in the year last year. And he's a big reason. I think they're going to be so good. I think Woolbright and Jackson are both, power 6 level players. And so that already makes their ceiling so high. DJ Campbell had a big game the other day. I don't know that he will always do that, but I like him as a player. I like Cornelius Williams. A little story on Williams. I know he was a big recruit for Murray State to get. Murray State got him. Matt McMahon got him there, and that was like a big time guy they got. And so he was the only one who transferred from, or he was the only recruit that went from Murray State and committed to LSU. So that says a lot there, that McMahon was like, hey man, you're good enough to play here too. And he'd never seen him in a college game.
Mm-hmm.
Other recruits ended up staying at Murray State. But he was one that, got invited. Hey, come here. Obviously didn't play. Tough to play at a SEC school as a former mid-major guy. But, as guy who's thought highly of, if he pans out, then things get really interesting. And then with Lampton too, the same thing. College Charleston, really good program. Looks like he started the other night. I think their bigs, losing Tyshawn Claude is significant, but at the same time, I kind of thought he was more overrated guy last year. Not that he's not a good player, but I thought his numbers were better than the real impact on winning he had last year. At the big, I think bigs are replaceable. Now, obviously not like a Jake Stevens or, even Logan Dye, the way he could score it. But I thought Claude was just, I don't even know. I just thought his impact on winning was less than the stats showed. He had awesome stats, and Georgia Tech obviously took him. Hope he does well there. If he had stayed at Western, they would no doubt be my number one pick. I mean, they are, but I think they can replace him with the guys they got there. Trying to think who else they have. Kamar Robertson, I liked him at Mercer. I'm interested to see if he starts at all. It looks like he did the other night. They started Russell Jones Jr. And I like Russell Jones Jr. Does everything he can with his height. Awesome defender,
Yeah.
awesome player. But I'm not. I can't say I'm a fan of his ceiling as a player.
Yeah,
But I mean, he's a guy who needs to play for you. But I don't know if he needs to be in the final five out there for you. And I'll be interested to see how that plays out.
I agree with you.
So let's go to UNCG. UNCG, I have fifth, and we'll talk about Chattanooga later. I'd have Chattanooga over them. Um, I'm not quite as high on UNCG. I know. I still have them in the tier above everyone in the top five, and I know I think they're like second in Vegas odds to win the SoCon. And people say Vegas. I saw somebody the other day, I think, comment on something I put it and said Vegas knows more than this and that. No, they preseason SoCon. Western Carolina was plus like 1100 to win the SoCon. They don't know more. That's all I needed to see. Um, so what are your thoughts on UNCG before I get into it?
I I have them fifth too. I'm really not as high on them as some people are. Obviously the Langley twins are both, you know, Keyshawn is an elite point guard and they both play elite defense. You put him next to Brown Jones, who's a double digit scorer at VCU. Outside of those three, I mean, what do you get? I mean, Jalen Brett did some good things last year. Jalen Gibson was really good at Winston-Salem. But what can those guys bring to the table in terms of elevating their game and stepping into new roles? I'm just not as high on them, and I see them finishing fifth.
Yeah, so my thing with the Langley twins, I like them. Um, obviously Keyshawn is better than Kobe, and that's always weird with twins when one is feels like he's kind of significantly better.
I'm a twin,
They
so
need Kobe to make a jump. Um, Keyshawn's got to stay the same, maybe up his efficiency a little bit, continue to keep that low assist to turnover ratio. Mikal Brown Jones, I like him, and I like Donovan Atwell, but I don't feel, and I think the coach thinks he's going to make a jump this year. Um, I don't know how many times wings like that do make a jump though, because I feel like I always every year I think a wing is going to make a jump in the SoCon and they don't. But I like him as a player, but I'm just lower on him overall. I don't think Keyshawn Langley. I think he's awesome, a two-way player, but as your number one scoring option, it feels like I don't know that. My basis is that I think offense wins in mid-major basketball, especially in this league, and they may be one of the more consistent teams because of their defense as they were last year. But I think when it comes down to it, this is an offense-driven league. A bunch of really good X's and O's coaches and good systems. Regular season success, and maybe I should pick them higher because they probably will. Because they're always that's defense is pretty much always going to be consistent. Whereas like a team like Chattanooga shoots it a lot, that's not always going to be there. So you're just going to go cold sometimes. Um, but I'm just low. I'm just lower on that style of play, and maybe it's more of a how I feel about them come Asheville, but I'm lower on that style of play. And I think last year was a little bit of a best case scenario for them. They had so many old guys. I mean, how many fifth year seniors do they have on that roster? And then just fourth year seniors that are back this year. I just kind of feel like it was best case scenario and that they may see a drop bearing some or barring some, big jumps from some players.
yeah. One thing I wanna say though is we have them fifth, but at least I think the gap between UNCG at fifth and I have ETSU sixth. The gap between these top five teams and UNCG as the fifth one to the rest of the conference is so wide. So I mean, it's no disrespect to UNCG. I just think they're just kind of in between in ETSU and the top of the league.
I completely agree. I don't think I think the SoCon is a lot better this year. I think it's got a chance to be a lot better, and I think those teams, in that pack, 6 to 8 pack, are probably going to be better than they were last year. I thought, it was obviously a big down year for the SoCon last year, but I think there is a clear top five. Just based off rosters alone. So let's go on to Chattanooga. Chattanooga at fourth, and a lot of my feelings on that is a little bit of some guys are underrated, but also Dan Earl's system, the offense, they really in the portal maybe not have got as big of names, but they have so many guys that fit what they do. And when you lead the nation in 3-pointers, you're always going to have a shot in every game. I think last year, maybe they don't get enough credit for how good they would have been last year because Jake Stevens went out. And it was the least surprising thing ever to me when he came back that they went to the SoCon championship. Nobody was going to beat Furman.
Oh yeah,
Furman was, to me, no doubt going to win the league all year last year. Credit to, Jalen Sloss and Mike Bothwell. Clearly the two best players in the league last year when Stevens was out. I think Stevens was probably the best. He was awesome last year. Just from a performance level, obviously Slosson's NBA guy, Bothwell, he's probably in the G League right now. I can't remember. Actually, he signed overseas.
that's right.
But yeah, what are your thoughts on Chat? Why do you think they're going to, I think we both have them fourth, which we'll disagree on things at some point. But right now we're getting along right now. So, what are your thoughts on them this year?
I agree. A lot of their guys are a little underrated. Maybe it's because we see them more often than most, but Dan Earl just kind of has a way of finding guys that kind of fly under the radar and then end up being just absolute studs for him. I think they're going to have some elite guard play. I mean, the other night they started Honor Huff and Miles Che, which is an elite backcourt. Um, Che is going to be a stud. The staff loves him. And then they have a forward rotation with, Demetrius Davis and Tyler Millen and Jan Zedek, and then you have Sam Alexis inside. So I told you this the other night, but I was kind of confused when Zedek got the starting nod, and then he played the game of his life. And I just think they've got the guys to make a little run. Sam Alexis and Randy Brady have shed a little bit of their baby fat. They just look like better basketball players than they were. Sam more than Randy, but
Yeah,
and
Sam.
then you got Rudy Fitzgibbons too. He's a guy that's played a lot of Southern Conference basketball. They're going to shoot the ball a lot, and if they get hot, they're going to be a tough out.
Yeah, they've got a bunch of guys. Like I said, the system fit is great. Miles Che, that's a name to remember. I don't think a lot of SoCon fans even know who Miles Che is. Obviously, Chattanooga fans probably do at this point. That's a guy they lucked out with a little bit. USF lost their coach, went to another school. I'm blanking on the names right now. And he decommitted. He's a kid from California, decommitted from there after the coach left. Chattanooga swooped in and got him. And he's almost, from the moment he stepped on campus, I've heard only good things about how talented he is. I thought Rudy Fitzgibbons was going to start for the longest time, and it kind of seems like, it doesn't even seem like it is the case. Che has stepped in and took over that point guard spot and really impressed guys with his size. He doesn't look like a freshman. He's well built for 6'2" or whatever he is, and that's good size at this level. And his decision making and just skill altogether, he just fits really well, especially around a guy like Honor Huff, who has got confidence to the moon. And this team is going to run on him, and living with, some nights he may not shoot as well. And maybe a little bit like David Jean Baptiste used to be for Chattanooga, where it's a guy that his efficiency could be really bad sometimes, but you lived with it because there's the nights where he can go for 20, 30 points. I think Honor Huff's going to be that way a little bit for him. I really like Jan Zedek. I was ready to make so many, hot takes about him being so underrated coming into the year, but I didn't hear quite as many good things, so I was hesitant on it. I heard things like you said. You were surprised he was going to. He started the other night. May or may not start. We'd see. He's such a perfect system fit. A little bit like Jake Stevens. Probably moves a little bit better than him. Obviously, doesn't have the height and length he does, but similar player in that he's a big, that's super skilled, and there's not a better system in the country for bigs that can shoot it like he can. I'll be interested to see him play against more size. Obviously, he did at Pepperdine, um, but he fell out of the rotation last year. I can't say I was watching Pepperdine basketball. Um, Unfortunately, I can't watch every mid-major. I'm more of a Southern mid-majors guy. Um, but I think he's going to really fill in well. Sam Alexis, like you said, he looks athletic. He, like baby fat's probably the right word. He was, had some weight on him last year, and not like he was fat, but he really looks leaned out this year. Quick, can really rise up. He's gonna have to be big for him this year, and that's maybe the one knock on the team is I really thought they should probably get another big from the portal. I think they got a roster spot open after Brody Robinson transferred. Um, Still, he's gonna have to be really good this year, and can't get hurt because if he goes down,
Yeah,
they're gonna
tough
have to
spot.
start Colin Mulholland. I think it is his name. I haven't even thought
Yeah,
about how you say his
Big
name.
Ginge. Yeah,
Yeah, and he's from what I've heard of him is they like him. He kind of fits the Jake Stevens blueprint, but he's a freshman big,
he
and
needs to put on the Jake Stevens weight in the
yeah,
4 years that he's here. Yeah,
he's probably not going to be ready this year, um, and that's totally fine. But you would rather not have to go to that. I like the wings, like you said. Demetrius Davis started the other night. He's a guy that's just such like a fun guy to think about his potential, and maybe he never reaches it. I know he grew a ton in college, even when he was at JUCO. And he's a guy. When I was at the SoCon tournament, I was talking to an NBA scout. He was there to watch Slauson and Jake Stevens and even Bothwell. He was writing his notes, and we were talking. And he wrote down Demetrius Davis's name. He's like, "Wow, that's like." He's like, "I'll keep an eye on him just because the God-given gifts there are there. Like he's long, athletic, can shoot it pretty well. He's just got to fundamentally put it all together. And that may not ever happen to reach a full ceiling, but even just the current version of him is good. Um, Tyler Millen from MTSU, which is an underrated program, MTSU, they are full of athletes. I don't know how Chattanooga beat MTSU last year. I remember I went to Murray State MTSU last year when I was home for a holiday or something. That team was athletic, and he started a good bit of games there over his. I think he played there 4 years. Um, he is like the picture of consistency from what I've heard and even what I saw the other night. Just a well built guy, can looks like he's strong enough to guard fours, but quick enough to guard smaller guys. Um, Shot it well, and that's a thing. Somebody I talked to the other day said they had talked to him, and he has become a lot more confident with the shooting. He didn't shoot great percentage last year. And part of that is, or a lot of that's just a system and the confidence they instill in you at Chattanooga because they want to shoot it so much. I'll be interested to see if he starts. He didn't the other night. Um, but he's a guy that just feels like maybe he's not going to be, a 15 point per game scorer. Not everyone is, but he's just going to be a good player who impacts winning.
I agree. He's almost like him and Demetrius Davis kind of are a bit of the same player. Maybe Tyler Millen's, kind of put those fundamentals together a little bit more.
Yeah, exactly. So let's do, some words on others. I think we both have ETSU probably as the other team. I like Brooks Savage, obviously coming from Steve Forbes, who was awesome in the SoCon. I think ETSU made the right hire. I just don't know that they're going to be good this year. I don't think they have the talent there. I like Jaden Seymour. Um, I just think their ceiling's limited with the talent they have, and they had a guy I'm totally blanking on the name who had a good game the other night, but I just don't know that they're going to have the talent there in year one.
Peterson.
Yeah,
Yeah, I need to see some stability out of that program before I really buy into him. I think Jaden Seymour's in for a big year, and then Kimari Peterson played really well the other night. And then they had a guy Asamoah who I think he made 4 threes in the first half. So I mean they're gonna have their nights where they put it
for sure.
together and get a win, but I don't see them stringing together that success for a whole season.
Yeah, hopefully better than the Desmond Oliver era for them. Then we'll go to Wofford, another new coach there. Again, I don't know that the ceiling is there. Corey Tripp is, I guess, their best player. People are assuming. And he had a big night the other night, and maybe he takes that jump. Kyler Filowich, I like him. He's a little undersized, but that dude is skilled. He can play. He can play at the big. Um, I like Jackson Civils. I think he's a good, solid player. I'd like to see him make a jump this year. But once again, I don't know that they have that kind of star power you almost need a little bit to really compete in the SoCon.
Yeah, I think they're. I've kind of put ETSU, Wofford, and Mercer in about the same category. I really love Dwight Perry as a coach. I mean, obviously
Mhm.
they do too. They took the interim tag off of him. They're in a bit of a similar situation to Furman, where they lose BJ Mack and Jackson Pavletsky, but not to the same extent. But I just think it's not their year, and they're gonna have trouble with the top teams in the conference.
Yeah, I agree. Let's talk Mercer. Come on, Mercer.
Ooh.
We come on. Like Greg Gary's time. I thought last year there'd be talk about maybe he would be getting close there to his time being up. I just don't know, and maybe it's a tough job. It's not as tough as the Citadel and VMI we'll talk about, but I don't know how you look at Jalen McCreary and just think, yeah, let's just run with him as the number one guy and lose everyone on our team and let's just do that. Because I think Jalen McCreary, a little bit like I was talking about Tyshawn Claude was last year. Um, Stats maybe a little empty sometimes. Don't know that he's the biggest, impactful player on winning. Sound like Brad Stevens there. That's something he always says is impacting winning. But I don't feel like he may be the most winning player in how he's used right now. I liked some of the freshmen they have from last year, and I'm totally blanking on it. I'll go back to the name after you talk to him here, but I hate that they lost David Craig. It's a guy who played some last year. It's another kind of shame on Greg Gary there for not playing him more. If you get a guy who's 7'3", um, my guy Gene Henley says he's 7'4" now. He's a Chattanooga local. Um, he's at Tennessee Tech now. You got to play that guy. You got at this level. Even if he is the least athletic player I've ever seen in basketball history. But when you're that big, you have to keep that guy in a program. Um, what are your thoughts on them? I guess.
I mean, they're kind of hard to judge because of their loss to Clark Atlanta. I was watching that game and they got down early in the second half and they made a run where the crowd kind of got into it, and it literally felt like Mercer was the D2 team, like
Yeah.
making a run that they shouldn't against Clark Atlanta. Obviously, McCreary's good. He got into foul trouble early in that one. I don't think he ever really found his rhythm. Um, Jock and Jonas
Yeah.
was he was not assertive at all. I don't He just looked really passive. He didn't really want the ball. But they did have three freshmen who came in and played really well. Um, and then Robbie Carbony, he came in and gave some good minutes too. So I mean, there are a few bright spots, but I
Yeah.
just think they're in
Jock
that
Jonas
middle
and
of the
Michael
pack.
Zanoni. Those are guys I like for the future, but I don't know that they're the answer right now. I think Jock Jonas can be better, but Zanoni is kind of a really confident shooter guy who struggled last year. We'll see what he can do. Then let's touch on the Citadel and VMI. Um, the Citadel gave NC State a pretty good challenge the other night. Um, Again, it's a tough job. I'm never gonna be too hard on those guys. You know, I just don't know how I feel about them. I think the one exception to my rule of always take high major transfers might be Quentin Malora Brown from Vanderbilt, who they have, because I watched a ton of Vanderbilt last year. He plays so hard. He may not be the most talented player. He gets everything out of what he has. Um, what are your thoughts, if any, on the Citadel there?
Yeah, I mean, you said it. It's These two are tough jobs. Malore Brown, high level guy, but and then they bring in Winston Hill from Presbyterian, grad transfer. I mean, he's a double digit scorer last season, but they just kind of don't have the firepower that the rest of the conference does.
Yeah, and then let's go to VMI. Um, I like Tayshawn Jackson a lot. I think he can maybe become a Walmart version of Jermaine Marshall. He kind of fits the same blueprint there. Um, and that will lead me into kind of, but outside of him, that will lead me into the question of we got from SoCon coverage on our Twitter. Can VMI ever break the freshman in transfers out cycle? And I hate to say it, I just don't think so. I think I said earlier this year that I could see them transitioning down, and somebody said, "Oh, well, they've done it forever, blah, this and that." From D1 to D2. Well, it's a new era, and that's going to happen for VMI. Just as a whole, like people don't want to be there unless you're just you got to have special kids that maybe even grew up in military families, really are loyal, hardworking. It's just a really tough place to be, especially as a freshman, and in the situation they're in now, where these freshmen that play there are getting so much opportunity and getting to show something that they will get another offer. It's just tough to break that cycle because there's nobody staying that makes, all right, this freshman's going to have to sit this year. Because just from a life perspective as a freshman, that's a tough school to be at. And I've read everything about it. When I first got into watching SoCon basketball, I was shocked about that whole thing. But yeah, I just think it's really tough. And um, I think Dan Earl probably did about as good as you can do there. Um, it just takes so many special kids to really be successful there, and I don't know if that's going to happen again in the current era.
Yeah, I mean it's a tough job. You went as far as to say that they're gonna go winless in conference play.
I did say that. I forgot about that.
Ouch.
Yeah, and I
Um,
kind of believe it.
yeah, it's so hard for them to recruit talent because they're a military, and then once they get talent, it's so hard for them to retain it because why would a guy stay when, he doesn't like what's at the end of his
Exactly.
tenure there
And
if
that's
he's
the only
played
and that's the
well in
only
their other
offer.
schools.
That's the only offer these guys have half the time too.
Exactly.
So, all right, so let's move on. We're gonna go to our awards predictions here. Um, we've done all SoCon team, player of the year, defensive player of the year, freshman of the year, newcomer of the year. Um, all SoCon team. We're doing 5 players. We're not with this participation award crap. We're not doing that. We're getting 5 players. Sorry if you get left out. I'll let you start, Matt, first. Who are your 5 on your preseason All SoCon team?
I've got Trey Jackson. I've got Vontarius Woolbright, Marcus Foster, Jermaine Marshall, and JP Pegues.
All right, we're pretty close there. I've got Jackson and Woolbright. I really like Jackson. I keep on saying that, but I think he's probably one of the more underrated players somehow. Um, I've got those 2. I've got Jermaine Marshall. I've got JP Pegues, and I went Keyshawn Langley. And I really like Marcus Foster, but I kind of think it's going to be hard for teams to get 2 players in that top 5. I'll say Woolbright and Jackson could very well be Pegues and Foster if Furman wins the conference. So then let's go to our player of the year. Who's your player of the year, Matt?
I've got Woolbright.
Okay, why you
He,
pick
uh,
him?
I mean, he does it all for that team. He opened the season last night with 19, 8, and 7. He's got the ability to score 17 plus on any night at a high clip, and he's a threat to have a double double night in and night out. I just think as far as he goes, Western Carolina goes.
And shout out his dad. He followed me on Twitter the other day. Gave a shout out to his son. Shout out Mr. Woolbright there. But unfortunately I didn't pick him for the player of the year, and I've got reason behind it. I took Jermaine Marshall because I think Sanford's gonna be really good, and I think he's gonna be the guy, no doubt there. I don't think there's I feel like he's probably gonna be a tier above everyone else. Like it's clearly gonna be his team. Whereas I think Pegues and Foster may go back and forth on whose night it is. I think Woolbright and Jackson, like you said, Woolbright fills up the stat sheet, but Jackson may have big scoring nights, like he does. He can really shoot it. So I kind of think by default, Marshall may be the beneficiary of that, of those being so many good players, and let alone he's an awesome player. He plays so hard. Um, and that will lead me to my defensive player of the year is also Jermaine Marshall. I really like him. He's such a hustle player. Um, can guard. I don't think there's nearly as many. There's not Jake Stevens in the league anymore. These, a 7-footer that can really score it, that can take advantage of that size difference. He's everywhere on defense. There's a bunch of guys who I even thought about maybe showing some ETSU love, giving it to Jaden Seymour just because he's so athletic. I like him. But at the end of the day, I think they're going to probably value there, and it could be me, I guess, technically. But I value uh, just winning a little bit, and I think Marshall will probably end up being the guy for me.
Well, I actually agree with you on that take. I think Marshall will be the defensive player of the year. Um, like I said, Coach McMillan says he's the hardest playing guy in the league. And if you look around, a lot of the best players in the league are big wings. So he's going to be matching up with Vontarius Woolbright and Marcus Foster and Jalen McCreary and guys like that all year long. And, he's going to have to prove himself. And I think he's got that chip on his shoulder and he'll do it.
Yeah, he does. I'm betting we have the same pick here. Freshman of the year, I'm going Miles Shea. Are you going him too?
I've got Miles J too.
And mainly, obviously, the one thing I'm not going to be super Chattanooga biased. I obviously we both go to school there, both cover the team, but that's one thing that always bothers me is people that are super biased for their schools. But he's got the most clear path to being a key contributor on a good team as a freshman. You don't see that very often. Maybe with Sanford, one of those freshmen has a big year. Um, but I think they're so deep with old guys there that there's not going to be enough opportunity. Che is going to start this year, be key to them winning. Um, I'd say the odds on him winning it are pretty high for me.
Yeah, I mean, he almost feels like a guy that shouldn't be here. Like you said, he was
Exactly.
going to USF and had decommit and all of that. He's a day one starter. I mean, he's alongside Honor Huff, who is a bit on the smaller side. So I mean, there's going to be a lot of times where Che is running the offense more than Huff, and I think he. You look at him, he plays at his own pace, and he's very confident. He didn't have a great night Monday, but I don't see that lasting. I think he's gonna get into a flow and he's gonna be a great player.
Yeah, you can't help but make the comparison. You say play at his own pace of Luca because he wears number 77. That's another shout
Yeah.
out. He gets points on my awards list for wearing number 77. That's awesome. Yeah, he's that. And I was talking to Gene Henley the other night at the game. Man, if Brody Robinson had to stay at Chattanooga and they had a 55 and 77 out there at the same time, that'd be so awesome. So,
I don't know if
all
you
right,
saw, but they ordered new jerseys so that they could print a 77 for him.
that's great. So let's go to newcomer of the year or transfer of the year, whatever you want to call it. Who do you have there?
So I'm in between two. To avoid Chattanooga bias, I'm gonna agree with Blue Ribbon and say Rylan Jones. He's just an assist machine. I think he's going to fit in very well with that offense. I touched on that earlier. But, if Sanford is very good and he's leading the charge, I see him winning it.
Well, I'm glad you went him because I have Jan Zedek.
I knew you
Um,
would.
I I just think he's going to have a clear role there. Looked awesome the other night, and maybe this is a little bit of a reaction to the other night with how well he shot it, but he just fits so perfectly into the Chattanooga system, and and I see with Rylan Jones, it's another guy. Garrett Hicks could be a guy. Sanford's got so many newcomers that could be good. Maybe PJ Smith at Furman has a huge year. If he put up numbers like he did at D2, he could do it. I think obviously his numbers will probably go down at this level a little bit. But yeah, I think Jan Zedek, underrated transfer, wasn't talked about. I see a lot of people that really cover mid-major basketball out west too that were like, "Oh yeah, that's awesome for Chattanooga getting him." I think he's going to be really good, and he fits perfectly into that system. And
Yeah,
just get a clear route to points every night.
after Monday night, Dan Earl wasn't very happy with how they played, and they seemed really sporadic, and they were trying to do too much. And every possession where they were doing that, it felt like the ball just found Jan Zedek, and he made the right decision with it. That being outside of his little halftime buzzer beater shot where he listened to the Covenant bench counting down three
Yeah.
seconds too early, but I
Yeah, not
think
ideal.
he's a good pick.
So let's finish off here. Let's talk a little bit of the games coming up. We won't spend too much time on it, but we did think there's a ton of good games. Thursday we got ETSU Elon, which should be a good game. Um, Mercer Chicago State should be one of the worst basketball games of the season. If you like bad basketball, watch that.
We need to get Mercer in the win
Chicago
column.
State's best players were gone uh, or were ruled ineligible. I know that. Big games on Friday though. Chattanooga Louisville. I kind of think Chattanooga should be favored. I know it's at the Yum Center. There was no crowd at that game the other night, dude. I saw videos of it. Nobody wanted to be there, and then they almost get beat by by UMBC, who wasn't even picked high in their conference. Do you think they're about to show up to watch them play Chattanooga? No, they're not. I don't think
Yeah,
the home court advantage is going to be nearly as big, and maybe they're nervous or something. But that Louisville team is so undisciplined. So many guys with red flags on that Louisville team. Brandon Huntley Hatfield got every opportunity to be good at Tennessee, and then basically acts like it was their fault when he left, and then goes to Louisville. Sky Clark has decommitted from 78 high schools and colleges over his college career. Um, they've got maybe they out athlete Chattanooga, but I just don't see it. I think Chattanooga wins that one, and at the very least it's going to be a good game.
I saw ESPN Analytics had Chattanooga with a 43% chance to win. So I mean
And I think it should be closer than that. I think that's just name
yeah,
value for Louisville.
I agree.
Poor Kenny Payne, dude. He cannot be a head coach. I love Kenny Payne. I'm a Kentucky guy. He's an awesome assistant. He's not a good head coach. Boston College, the Citadel. Don't know much about Boston College. I would think they should probably win that game. But two real good games there are Sanford VCU. VCU is always a good program, and Belmont Furman. Um, Belmont is really good. That's going to be a really good test for Furman. Hopefully JP McGee's plays. That'll be really sad if he doesn't play, and we just have to watch, because if Furman plays like they did the other night, they will lose to Belmont. Belmont's got Cade Tyson is going to be an NBA player. Malik Dia um, was a 4-star recruit who went to Vanderbilt and didn't get a chance, didn't get many chances there, and put up like 25 in his first game at Belmont. I think they had 29 and 25, Tyson and Dia the other night, and then they got Jacoby Gillespie, who's really good. Belmont, I think, is going to compete for the Missouri Valley, which is a better conference than the SoCon at this point in time. They're going to compete to win that, so that's going to be a big test for Furman. I'm interested to see that one. And then same with Sanford VCU. You got any thoughts
Yeah,
on those games?
Belmont struggled when they left the OVC for a little bit. They kind of took a step back, but it's good to see them back on their feet. And I mean, they get a mid-major conference champion in Furman. And you also said if Furman plays like they did the other night, they're gonna lose.
Oh yeah, they will
But
for sure lose, especially if they don't have Pegues. If they play like they did the other night, and I really hope they do have Pegues, because I think you'll learn a lot there. If that's a close game, a good game, you got to feel good about Furman. If they get blown out, fully healthy, you'll start to feel a little worse about them.
yeah, I can't claim to know a lot about VCU, but I mean,
They're
like
always a
you
good
said,
program.
they're a very good program. It's a really good test. I mean, Sanford is going through the gauntlet here early, going to
Yeah,
Purdue and VCU. They Bucky McMillan wants to find out what kind of team he
that's
has.
another one you may learn a lot, because VCU did lose to McNeese State the other night, but McNeese State, if you don't know, just got Will Wade, Chattanooga legend, LSU legend. Um, what's the what's the quote? A strong ass offer, he said uh, a few years back. Got that caught on tape. Known cheater, but he has turned McNeese State will win their conference this year. So that's, they beat VCU, but that's honestly not a crazy big deal. It was a close game. If Sanford wins that, I feel good about Sanford too. And that will tell us a lot more than that Purdue game did. So I guess that'll wrap it up for our first episode. This one went a little longer, for sure, but we wanted to touch on a lot of preseason things. In the future episodes, we're going to keep them definitely under an hour. This one I don't think quite reached an hour. Because one thing I've always learned with podcasts is they're too long a lot of times. I don't care to listen to all of it. We want to touch on all the biggest things SoCon, the best games, best stories, best performances. We're going to try to do this once a week. We appreciate everyone who's tuned in here or followed us. Make sure to follow us on Twitter. Follow our account at 2BigSoCon on Twitter. We're going to post this on YouTube and all streaming platforms that we can get it on. So appreciate you guys tuning in for the first one. We'll see you in the next episode.